What's up, guys? My name is Randy Marshall. I am a local realtor here in the western suburbs of Chicago. Now, today in this video, I'm going to break down 5 mistakes most home buyers are making when they're relocating to the area or if they're just not familiar with the area. So let's get into it. All right, so number 1, winters. In the summer, every house, yard, park, lake, and summer event looks good in June and July. You'll see the parks and the pools are full. People out riding their bikes or walking their dogs, and you're gonna make a decision to live here on that brief window of weather perfection. Now, what you don't see is the 5 to 10 inches of snow that comes in December through sometimes March. And if you were to break the year down by months and seasons, or really by your mental state, it looks kind of like this around here. Starting with the cold, November through February is an absolute mess. You've got snow, sleet, bitter cold. It's windy. I mean, you name it. You can spin the wheel of pretty much what comes next for the weather. Expect your furnace to be cranking hard for pretty much 2 straight months, usually January and February. Now, March through April is unpredictable at best. I mean, we might get a random snowstorm early to mid-March, and temps could be in the teens to 60 degrees just randomly. May it warms up a little bit, but it's still pretty much unpredictable. By May, you haven't usually put your jacket away. Now, June through August, it's solid. That's predictable. Your jacket's away. You're pretty much enjoying that weather pattern right there. Once September hits, that's, hit or miss. It's usually still warm, but might be, a touch of jacket weather here and there. October's unpredictable as well. We've had Halloweens where you barely need a hoodie, and then others where it's ice rain and light snow. And that's really the trap. So you either visited during the summer or worse, during a mild winter, and you decided everyone's exaggerating about the windy city, and you make the commitment to move here. Now, 24 and 2025, we got very little snow. Honestly, I was to the point where I almost considered just selling the snowblower. It's taking up too much room in my shed. Like, get a couple bucks for this, let's just get it out of here. Wife convinced me different to hold on to it, and then January of this year, 2026, we got over 13 inches of snow in 2 different snowstorms. We had some solid cold weather where the ponds were just frozen for weeks. I know because I skated out every chance that I got. Lakes were frozen, and for most people, they just deal with the cold. But when it comes to snow, it just flat out sucks. It's nice if you take the kids sledding around Christmas. It looks nice, but other than that, it ruins your commute. It's dangerous for older people who fall, and it absolutely ruins your car. Now, if you live down south and you don't experience snow yearly, experiencing a Chicago winter is like putting your car in a time capsule and just aging it every 2 years for every 1 year. The salt rusts everything. It gets on your floor mats. It gets all over the car. So if you're thinking about moving to the suburbs of Chicago, try to envision how you'll spend the cold months and then that transition from winter to spring and its unpredictability. Number 2, now, if you've never owned a basement, before I even start this, I researched how many homes across the US actually have basements. I was shocked to find out that if a US census showed only about 17% of homes have basements, which is mind-blowing because having lived in the suburbs my entire life, when we look for homes, almost everyone wants a basement, and they expect it if they can afford it. When I considered moving to Florida like everyone else during COVID, I remember being on Zillow and selecting basement in the criteria. My search results just instantly went to 0. And I messed with the search probably for a good 10 minutes, thinking there's something wrong with this, resetting it and starting over. And then just searching on Google, about Florida homes. There is no basements because the water table is too high. You're much closer to sea level. So I guess I should have figured that. You're looking at it and you see the Everglades, but for us who have lived in the Chicago suburbs our entire lives, we just expect it. So if you're coming from the south, there's a decent chance that every house that you lived in sat on a slab. Now, if you're walking through a Wheaton 2-story with a 1,200 finished basement, technically under grade, you're thinking, what am I gonna do with this space? But before thinking about that, think about the water and how water can get into that basement. So we mostly sit on clay soil here, and clay doesn't drain real well. It holds water. So when we get 3 inches of rain in an afternoon, if that water isn't routed correctly, it just sits against the foundation and it's likely to make its way into the basement. So if you're buying a home with a finished basement or you have plans to finish it, just make sure the grading around the home and your sump pump are in solid working order. You'll be looking at things like where the sump pump pit is, if there's actually a pump in it, does it have a battery backup or a secondary pump in there? And then just where does that water end up? A lot of times you'll see a pipe, sticking out of the side of a house. Sometimes it goes underground. You just never know. You kind of got to track it down. Now, around here over the last month, we've gotten a ton of rain and lots of the homes got water in the basements, either through they lost power and they just have no battery backup or generator, or the water was just being directed really, really poorly and just ends up back against the foundation, which eventually will seep up through and into the basement and possibly ruin everything you got down there. So you're gonna wanna look for things like foundation cracks, floor cracks, signs of previous water intrusion. That's an easy one to spot, especially if the basement was finished. And in some cases, mold if they didn't remediate it or take care of the issue, or cut the drywall out, or even remove wood that was just soaked. So around here, you'll go through a house and you'll see drywall. It's cut, 2 feet up from the floor, and you pretty much have your answer as to what happened. But probably what's more important is how it happened. So in Illinois, we have to disclose any type of reoccurring water intrusion. Your attorney, they'll use, yes, we use attorneys in Illinois. They'll use a disclosure and they'll ask if there was any major insurance claims as well. So this will usually cover flooding, fire, weather-related damages to the home, and it pretty much opens the book to the history of the home and how these issues happen. So if you're working with a knowledgeable realtor, a lot of times they can even just help you spot potential issues before you write the offer. I've seen so many homes where it's just, you go through and you can see water staining on, all of the 2x4s or even the drywall, or if they have, baseboard or wood paneling and things like that. It's pretty easy to spot. All right, quick pause. If you're actually planning to move to the western suburbs, whether it's Carroll Stream, Glendale Heights, Bloomingdale, Hanover Park, anywhere in DuPage County, reach out. I do this every week, and I would much rather answer these questions before you write the offer than after. Number 3, skipping the sewer scope. So your home inspector is gonna run every faucet, flush every toilet, and hopefully write in the report that the plumbing appears to be functional. But what seems to be coming up more and more during the home inspection are tree roots in the sewer line that lead to the main sewer line. So you've got your sewer line that's gonna go from your house to the main sewer line. And those are coming up, either they're cracked, they're collapsed, tree roots just making their way in there and clogging them up. So, a lot of the homes around here, they were built in the 50s and 60s. So back then they used cast iron or even clay pipes that ran from the home to the streets where the main sewer is. Now the homeowner is responsible for the entire length of the pipe that goes from your house to the main sewer line connection. And buyers are more often choosing to have a plumber scope it with a camera. So an inspector or plumber is going to basically run a camera down the pipe to be sure it's clear. Now if that pipe collapses or tree roots are intruded into that pipe, the water and whatever else goes down that pipe can just back up into the home. Last year I had a buyer of mine that we scoped the line and we found out that the line was partially collapsed and there was tree roots in there. And this home was built in 1990. Now the main sewer line was actually PVC, which is what they use today. But the result was a $4,800 for a plumbing company to come, dig up the front yard and install that new section of pipe. It was only about 4 to 5 feet of pipe, but that pipe is buried about 4 feet down. So it's not an easy or an inexpensive fix. Now, my buyer ended up getting a credit from the seller, but had they not done that during the inspection, at some point that issue would have presented itself, most likely as a sewage backup into the home. And here's the math on that, and this is why I bring this up as a possible inspection item for my buyers. A sewer scope runs $200 to $350 at most. Spot repair in one bad section of a pipe can be $3,000 to $4,000. And the pipe's buried 4 feet down, like I was saying. Now replacing 20 to 40 feet of failed pipe could cost over 10 grand. So $300 to find out what's buried in that yard before it's legally your yard, probably a good bet. I think that's the best return on any dollar you can spend in the transaction. Number 4, radon. So if you don't know what radon is, I guess the quick definition is it's a carcinogen, odorless gas you don't even know you're breathing in. And this one is where I lose a lot of out-of-state buyers. Now, if you're coming from Florida, Louisiana, coastal Texas, you may have never even heard or had this conversation. And there's geological reasons why. Now, radon's what you get when uranium in the ground breaks down. Uranium's everywhere. I mean, there's trace amounts of it in basically all rock, but how much of that gas ends up in your living room comes down to three things. One, what's in the bedrock beneath you. Number two, how easily the gas moves through the soil on top of it. And three, whether you have a basement or a partially below grade living area. Radon's measured in PCIL, which is picocuries per liter. I might be saying that wrong. In Florida, it averages like 1.8 PCIL, Georgia 2.3, Louisiana 1.3, Illinois averages 5.3 PCIL. Now, DuPage County specifically, the average test is around 5.4, and roughly 42% of homes tested come back at or above the EPA action level. And the EPA action level is 4.0. So we're in EPA Zone 1, the highest classification that there is. So Cook County's at 5.2, you've got Kane at 4.6, Will County at 5.1, and McHenry's the worst of the bunch at 5.9 with about 48% testing high. So think about that. Basically a 50% chance that radon's gonna come back high in this area. So why us and not them? It's pretty much a long geological explanation, probably better explained by a scientist rather than a realtor, but it comes down to this. So sandy porous soils actually move radon gas faster than clay does, and gas travels easily through the sand and the gravel than through wet, dense clay. So sand's not automatically safer, but it's just that most of Florida, there isn't much uranium in the source rock to begin with, so there's not a lot of gas to really move. And rocky doesn't automatically mean higher either. You've got granite and quartz-rich rock, they tend to carry more uranium, and that's why the Appalachian Corridor through Virginia, Tennessee, Carolina, Georgia, that's full of Zone 1 counties, even though those states have low averages overall. But the biggest variable isn't so much the geology, it's the basement. So the same soil gas that's under a ranch on a slab in, say, Arizona, and under a finished basement in Wheaton, it's completely different exposure. So just because you're in Wheaton and you built a bedroom down there, the warm air rising through the house, that's gonna pull up the gas through the house. Now, fixing it is cheap. Your sub-slab depressurization runs like $900 to like $2,000 statewide, around $1,200 to $1,500, give or take, but that's a pipe and a fan. So basically what they're doing is they're installing a pipe through the slab, and then they're hooking up a fan, and the fan just runs consistently and draws a vacuum underneath the slab to pull the gases out. And that's gonna reduce the levels by up to 99%. Now, as of June 2013, all home builders are required to install a passive radon mitigation system in all single-family homes and multi-family dwellings with 2 or fewer units. Illinois also requires sellers to disclose known radon hazards under the Illinois Radon Awareness Act. Now, if the house already has a mitigation system, it's not an automatic pass. The systems fail kind of quietly here, but you should test it anyway. And the test for the inspection is cheap for a potential upside of the probability. When close to 50% of the homes have high radon and testing costs you $200 to $250, the seller is likely to compensate you for the cost of the system, or they'll have it put in before you even close, which is even better. Once they have it put in, if they're doing it before closing, they're gonna retest to make sure that those levels are passing below 4.0, that is the passing. Now, if the home already has a passive system, so that meaning the pipe's installed but it's got no fan, it's still a good idea to test. Now, I've seen a lot of readings come back high with passive systems, but in that case, the major work has been done, and having a company install, and wire up a fan box and a fan, it's usually half the cost of a full system, if not less. For homes with an active radon system that's working properly, the chances of radon coming back high are pretty darn low. All right, mistake number 5. So you didn't plan out your commute. And here's what I hear from a lot of out-of-state buyers. So they'll pull up Google Maps and they'll see it's 25 miles to the loop from the suburb town that they're considering. They figure Easy commute to the city for work, maybe 30, 45 minutes at most, good to go. Unless you're planning to drive to work between midnight and 4 a.m., that kind of timing is just a dream to get into the heart of the city. Your commute's more like an hour to an hour and a half, depending on how far north or south of the highway that you're working. And this is where so many people, they see where the metro train is located from the area that they're looking to move in that city. So this is partially why towns like, Wheaton, Glen Ellyn, Lombard, Downers Grove, they're so competitive with buyers wanting to move there. All of these towns have a train station, and you pair that with award-winning schools, and the recipe's there for higher priced homes. If you're not working in the city, I would highly recommend hopping onto Google Maps and just running different scenarios of where you're thinking to moving or relocating to and where you're working at rush hour times during the day. So punch in an address in the city, area that you're looking, run it at the worst times possible during a rush hour, and see the commute. Now, if you live in, let's say, Wheaton and you work in Arlington Heights, it looks like a straight shot up north, down up 355, 290, and it is until you get to about 290 interchange and traffic's backed up 2 miles. So before you commit to the house and think that the drive 5 days a week won't be too bad, reach out. Let's have a conversation about real world expectations, experience of really what you should expect in drive time from home to work. All right, so to recap all this, we've got unpredictable weather, basements that may flood, clogged sewer laterals, radon, and then an actual commute, which may or may not be logical. Now, some of these might be deal killers, but every single one of them is knowable before you make an offer or even look in the wrong places that don't fit your life. The people who get hurt aren't the ones who bought the wrong house, they're just the ones who found out a week or two after moving in and then living their day to day. So do your homework, or let me do most of it for you if you want to save some time. Guys, if this video helped you in any way, or you're considering relocating to the western suburbs of Chicago, like and subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to break down what it's like to live in all of the towns that are in the suburbs and living and working in these areas. I'll see you on the next one.